if I may say, I have one comment, and that is at the adjournment, it was adjourned by Chairperson Landrigan on number 9.
That's, you're good.
Are there any other changes? Thank you.
The same thing.
So, seeing no other changes, may I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of January 26th, 2009 special.
Second.
I second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Roll call.
Roll call.
Commissioner Adrian,
Abstain.
Commissioner Mardian,
Yes?
Commissioner Amirian,
Yes.
Commissioner Stepanian,
Abstain.
and Chair Landrigan.
Yes. So the minutes are approved. And now we will open the floor for oral communications, and this discussion is limited to items not a part of the agenda. Each speaker is limited to 5 minutes. The commission may question the speaker, but there will be no debate or decision. Do I have any cards for oral communication? Thank you. No, so we will move on to old business, number 5. Would that be you, Jay?
That's me. We just wanted to give you an update on the project that you reviewed back in December for the Woolworth Building at Brand and Wilson, the former Woolworth Building, more recently Zany Brainy and several other businesses. And it's been proposed that the Staples copy shop boutique Staples is going to be moving into the building. And they actually have begun tenant improvements on their portion of the interior, which is basically the southern section of the building. Running along Wilson Street, and with a small section of the front facade being changed to accommodate them, and then also a door being installed in the right hand. Actually can't really see it up on the screen very well, but the first full storefront bay from the corner is going to have a new doorway inserted in it. And these are all things that you approved in December, felt the design was appropriate. The issue we're just bringing to you, just to give you the update, is relating to the landscape and feature with the cutout metal people that you reviewed and we discussed in some length back in December. Because of some issues between the Public Works Engineering team and Redevelopment Agency, there is a question of whether this is an encroachment into the public way, how much of an encroachment, what kind of process they need to go through in order to construct this. So as of now, that component of the project is on hold. We expect that it's going to come back as something. We're not sure if it's going to be as extensive as this, but it could be a more kind of a scaled-back landscape feature. So
Jay, may I interrupt you for a moment?
You may.
Does the owner still agree about putting that in?
Yeah, the owner is still interested in doing it, but because of the encroachment issue, they want to get the tenant in, so they don't want anything to hold that up right now. So everything's moving forward with the interior work. And then we're going to come back and look at either this design, if they work out that the full extent of this planter box that's going down in the sidewalk is allowable. If it isn't, it may be something scaled back. The worst case scenario is that nothing will happen and we'll have a facade similar to what we've had for years on this building.
Madam Chair, can I ask a
Yes,
question?
please.
But I specifically remember I asked that question when we reviewed this, that was there any issues as far as the location, and I questioned the speaker, and apparently at that time there was no issues. So
yeah, I think this has come up as engineering was reviewing it, and they thought that there was adequate space on the sidewalk at the time, and it turns out that it's not because it's coming into the public space, and I'm not even sure what the exact details are.
So we're going to lose the whole thing?
Not necessarily. It's just the timing. If they resolve this, if this was tied with the whole project, it would delay the tenant moving into the space. So GRA has asked that we just put this on hold, and the owner is putting it on hold. Evidently, it's the owner's intention to have a feature here to kind of soften the appearance of the wall. But like I said, in the worst case, we'll have the same wall situation that we've had since, the building was remodeled, at least in 1942. And it may be scaled back to more of just a landscape feature without the pilasters and those cutout
I know that's not.
figures.
I don't want to get into a big discussion about it, but would there, I'm sure there'd be some alternative applications to that wall, other than if they could not actually dig a planter space, something that we could even see that might be attached to the wall as an ornamental feature. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
A trellis piece or something that could be attached to just a, because that wall is so, it's just
Or even a mural that
something.
emulates
Just as too blank.
vegetation would be
Yeah.
an improvement.
Okay, there could be a problem. Once the encroachment issue is determined, even something like a trellis, the property line is right at the building wall line. So anything beyond that except a mural, I think the thickness of paint would be acceptable. So we could certainly make a recommendation to the redevelopment agency that that's something the commission would entertain as a substitute. So.
Yeah, I sure like to see something there.
I would too.
And the whole intent was to enhance the building, but, if we get...
It
any-
also enhances the public pedestrian experience, which engineering doesn't always consider when they make their determinations. It's sort of a balance.
But ultimately, and you tell me, I don't think there are any historic issues in terms of whether there's something there or not. And so ultimately, it'll be kind of a design issue of what they find is
But this
appropriate.
whole concept was voluntary, was not...
Yeah, this was not required by any of the
Yeah, okay.
zoning codes or anything.
Thank you, Jay.
Certainly.
Thank you. Would you like to continue, Jay? Anything else?
Sure. Not on that item, but I think we have direction from the commission for the redevelopment agency. But item 5B, this is an exciting item because we have our 3 designated historic districts, 2 of which will be officially designated on March 5th. So we want to kind of move forward with getting some sort of gateway signage finalized so that we can work with the Public Works Department to kind of commemorate the designation of these neighborhoods and put up signs that will display not just to people living there, but everyone passing by, that something different's happening on Royal Boulevard, Cottage Grove Avenue, and in Ardeven Highlands. I've been working with the sign department of Public Works to determine what kinds of signs would be easiest and best suited for the historic districts. And if you look at this is a 12 by 18 metal blank, which is one of their standard blanks. And we determined that this is probably the best size to use, given that this is used for other types of signage throughout the city. And I took an opportunity to use my limited graphic skills to throw together a mock-up. And this is not a final design by any means, but we're hoping to get some feedback from the commission to give us direction to see if this is an appropriate direction we're moving in. Basically, we've taken the old city seal, which I thought was appropriate because we have historic districts. The city seal probably was used at the time these districts were being built out, and apply it to a very simple type of signage that would have the tan background, brown lettering, and a brown border, very similar to other historic signage that we have in the city directing people to the Verdugo Adobe or other historic sites. I did a mock-up, which I have here, which you'll notice the mock-up, which you can see more in the right-hand photo. As soon as I put this up on the street, I realized that the font size was way too small. So I've kind of redone it. So the package that you have in front of you is kind of a revised version of this. But this basically shows you some of the installation locations where this could possibly go. Obviously, we don't want to add to kind of any sense of clutter on the street or kind of an overwhelming amount of signage. What's that?
At like estate sale.
With the estate sale, right?
You got the estate sale up there, huh?
Yeah,
Missed
I
that,
wanted
darn
to
it.
take it down for the picture, but then I knew I wouldn't put it back up. So I didn't want to deprive them of their sale. So, but this basically gives you an idea of, I think that the sign size is appropriate given the other signs we have around. But once we have the larger font on it, I think it'll be more legible from when you're driving by and certainly when you're walking around the neighborhood. I've kind of, done a little scouting out in the 3 districts and found that there are several different locations that we could choose. And Cottage Grove seems like the easiest because there are 2 main access points in and out. So I believe we need just 2 signs there. Royal Boulevard could have 3 to 4 signs depending on what kinds of locations we find, and how budget issues work with the Public Works Department and planning. And then Ardeven Highlands, because it's a larger district with more streets coming through, is obviously going to have more signs. So everything you're seeing right now, these are just, probable locations. We don't know exactly where signs are going to go. And on that end, we don't know exactly what they're going to be attached to, because we have many options at many different intersections. So on the top here, we have intersection in Ardeven Highlands, where we have a big Cobra head light post. We have street signs. In some places there are stop signs. I'm not sure that we can even put these on stop signs, if that would be legal. So we're going to be working closely with Public Works and with the sign team to make sure that wherever these are being installed, it's going to meet city standards and then also be legible. We'll also be talking with members of the community to make sure, like you see on the bottom example, we have one of the historic lampposts in Cottage Grove, and at some point Cottage Grove became a jewel neighborhood, which was a city designation. And this sign is exactly where I would think a historic district sign would want to go. So we don't want to take this sign down if it means something to the neighborhood. So we're going to have to look closely at each sign location to see if in some cases do we need to install a new pole for a historic district sign? Can we reuse what we have? And like I said, we'll be working with everyone to finalize a budget. Right now we're looking, if we're attaching signs to existing structures, it's about $50 a sign. And if we had to install a new pole, I'm not sure what the price would be, but it would go up somewhat from there. And so we'll be taking care of all of that. What I'm hoping to hear from the Commission today is, we've already discussed this. I can't remember. It was last year, about 4 or 5 months ago. And I think the Commission gave direction that we want to have some sort of gateway signage at the districts. I'd like to hear from you about the proposed design for the signs, to see if you have any thoughts about that. And then any other thoughts you might have?
Commissioners?
I have a thought. Can we get a little more choice on the font?
Of course.
You'll bring that to us sometime?
Well, with your direction, if you give me ideas today, what we don't want to, we could certainly have, we're not going to have this resolved in a month, so we could have
I'm not sure yet.
designs for you next month.
I'm thinking a little more, not so standard.
Something more of a serif instead of a sans serif.
Yeah, we might hear from the sign people about legibility issues and things like that. I went with a block sans serif like this specifically because it's more legible, but we certainly could throw out a bunch of different examples, and as long as they're okay with legibility, I don't think we're going to have any problem. I forgot to mention also this will be going to City Council, so there will be kind of a final review at that level for both the budget and then the presence of the signs and their design.
No, are we going to make it consistent with other signage we have, like the Brand Library signage and a few other historical?
The thought was we wanted these to be unique to the historic districts, but kind of blend into the palette of the signage we have in the city. So that's why the colors were chosen specifically, because those meld. The other historic signs don't use the Old City Seal, for example.
Yes,
That was
right.
something that I thought, with your, backing was something that was really appropriate for the districts and kind of fun for people to see the old seal. And you should also note the seal that's in here is taken off of some Old City letterhead, and ultimately it has this kind of fuzzy, cloudy thing, kind of highlight or shading. What I'd like to do is get rid of that cloud so it's more distinct.
Substantial.
Yeah, so it's more distinct boundary lines.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. It'll make it a little more crisp and reflect the lines are.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to see.
In terms of font, with the existing layout, you're just thinking more of a serif, kind of an older style font?
Well, there's soft serifs and there are hard serifs.
Okay.
And I think the legibility, I think give us a couple of choices that your sign people would feel comfortable with to choose from, don't you think?
Yeah, absolutely, because I think this is too, give it a little
It's a little too
flair.
modern.
Yeah,
I think it was too sterile.
Yeah.
Okay. It's Verdana.
yeah, they're done.
Remember, no Verdana.
It's not universe.
Can I
Yeah.
ask? Can I ask you to go back to that?
Excuse me.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm glad to see more samples, but this to me is fine too.
Okay.
If there was no request for additional signs to choose or to look at, this is fine for me. I like to be able to read it as soon as I see it, rather than try to cringe and try to make sense of the letters. These are very nice. I like the colors, and it's very distinguished. I am okay with it.
Okay, and can I just ask, is everyone with the designation date and the balance of the City of Glendale Historic District on either side of the seal, that look is something we should go forward with?
Well, I might have a suggestion, but Mr. Adrian had it. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. I just have a couple of comments, or suggestions, really. Jay, could you go back to the visual you had there with the street? It was Green Street on the.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that one there. I was just wondering, is there any chance or any the way the orientation of the sign goes, would it be maybe more if you're going to put it on a pole or some sort of a vertical element like that? Would you rather see it as a vertical sign than a horizontal?
We played with both versions, and basically in-house among the design staff here, we thought the horizontal orientation worked best, especially because we have some long, Art Even Highlands is a long name, and we want to kind of have as much length, I guess,
Okay.
so spell these out.
That's fine. The other thing I was thinking was, does it have to be black on, or can it be reversed and be a dark background with the letters in a more lighter tone?
It could be reversed. We chose this specifically because it's very similar to the kind of the palette of the existing city historic signs.
Okay.
And even around the state, so a lot of the signs you see, I guess some of the
Same
state
tone.
signs are actually what you're asking to
Same tone.
reverse.
Do you like the tones?
Yeah.
All right.
I think it's more consistent with, like you said, our other signage that.
And the other comment I would have would be if you were to have to hang or attach a sign, what are the possibilities of actually, in that visual you have there with Green Street, would it be appropriate to put another sign below the Green Street sign, attach it to the Green Street so it hangs, and then you get that long thing, and you.
Yeah, and that's the type of signage when we talked
that?
about this a few months ago, we considered, and we still could consider in the future, we're choosing to do these gateway signs because it's just a minimal number of signs. We can get them up fairly quickly without any kind of budget issues. What we run into if we start redoing the street signs is there are certain state codes for
Don't redo
reflectivity.
don't redo the street sign, but attach it to the street sign.
Yeah, and I didn't bring the presentation I gave before, but there were a couple that did that where they kind of had this little clamp-on thing that went on the street signs. Some of those didn't look that good. There's no reason why we couldn't find one that did look good. Ultimately, what some cities do is every street sign in a historic district will have a different color palette, sometimes, like you were saying, the reversal of dark to light, and then kind of a listing of the historic district on it. It's something I think we can look forward to and work on figuring out what the budget for that would be. There were also issues with the sign shop has certain kind of schedule for replacing signs in different neighborhoods. So they had an issue with, could we just come in and say you must replace the signs in these districts when other neighborhoods might have been in line before that. That's all issues we could resolve when we go to city council. We could talk about how we might proceed with signs for the future. Because I think it would be a good idea to have more than just gateway signs.
Yeah, so basically, this dark on light is consistent with the rest of Glendale's signage, right?
The historic signs.
Historic signs. Okay. Well, I don't want to be inconsistent.
Okay.
Stefania.
Yeah, but, to my knowledge, I like the colors and I like the font. And it goes with the other signs around, like Casa San Rafael, except there's some oval on the top. There's some design on the sign that it's around, which I noticed. But other than that, the sign itself and the color and the font is okay.
Okay.
Well, got it. I do have a question. To me, the Historic District, Royal Boulevard Historic District, Cottage Grove Historic District, and then City of Glendale Historic District is repeated. I was just wondering if it just could be a little more if the historic district, if it said Royal Boulevard and maybe it said City of Glendale Historic District and change it slightly and maybe put designated below, somehow or another, that we didn't have City of Glendale Historic District and Historic District repeated.
Yeah, I agree with you. Good observation.
It just seems like
Yeah.
a
And we had
A
considered
Yeah,
that.
just in one, yeah.
One of the tricks is Royal Boulevard's a good example. Cottage Grove not so good because this entire district is the entire street. But on Royal Boulevard you have a long street, only part of which is in the district. And part of it was also we wanted to kind of, we want these to be thought of as the Royal Boulevard Historic District. So, if we were going to eliminate one, I wonder if it would be better to eliminate the bottom one so that anyone coming through the city would say, this is the Ardeven Highlands Historic District, not Ardeven Highlands City of Glendale Historic District in the fine print.
Well, I think that would be okay. Would you mind coming back with a couple of more
Sure. Mhm.
options for us?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, that's good, yeah.
No problem.
Thank you.
Certainly.
This is pretty exciting.
Yeah. Okay.
And if that concludes your presentation?
Indeed.
All right. Well, we get to new business, one of our most exciting portions of our agenda, and we have for number 6, new business, 1117 Rosmoyne Avenue, Glendale Register nomination and Mills Act contract application. And so, Mr. Platt, you want to do the presentation, and I do have one speaker card.
Right. Here we go. This is 1117 Rosmoyne Avenue, and as you can see, it's a fairly grand Spanish colonial revival in a neighborhood that has a lot of nice houses, but this house certainly stands on its own and is fairly prominent on the street. Here it is in the Rosmoyne neighborhood, and here we are at the corner of Cabrillo Drive, which is a little one-block street, and Rosmoyne itself. And what is particularly wonderful about this project or this house is that we have a very early photograph, which is the thing we always want. We always ask if anyone has it, and everyone says they don't, and it's really hard to find. But here we can really see that this house, over almost 80 years, or for about 80 years now, has very much kept its historic character intact, and it has really a lot of the real character-defining features of the colonial revival style, some of which we see here. I think especially notable in the top left is that massive corbel that's holding up this projecting bay over the front door. We have a lovely, very simply detailed arch-headed picture window. All of the windows in the house are original wood windows, which is very impressive. And we have the lovely wrought iron balcony, which is on the left side of the front facade, balanced by the more austere living room wing with the arched window. And even down to having this wonderful, just punched metal light fixture at the front reflects a real high level of integrity over the years. As we turn the corner, because this is a corner lot, the architect of the building, and we don't know much about the architect of the building, in fact we don't know who it was, really spent a lot of time looking at this portion of it also. So we have these other corbels with the segmental arched-headed windows in them, this very cool kind of pointed arch at the breezeway going into the backyard. And then we have these little wing walls that extend from the garage on either side of the garage door opening, kind of serve like visual buttresses for the building. So the house was built in 1929, and it was built by a speculative developer, as best we can tell, but was bought the following year in 1930 by Ray Hawley, who was the son of Henry Hawley, who was the man behind the LA Concrete Rock and Gravel Company. And we'll introduce Diane Spurlock, the owner, in a couple of minutes, because she has a lot of interesting anecdotal information about the house and some people who may have spent time there. But what we weren't able to determine was get enough significance for the son of Henry Hawley to say he himself was a significant figure in the history of Glendale, though he did work for his father's company and may have had some interesting house guests over the years and interesting things happening. But in staff's opinion, well, let me just, before we get to the opinion, these are a few of the minor alterations that have been made over the years. In the 70s, the swimming pool was added, And you can see on the left side of that photograph, there's a kind of covered terrace. And we're not sure, the current owner isn't sure exactly what the chronology of events there is. Having some sort of cover there seems appropriate to the style and the period, and it may even be an older feature, but it's been redone in recent years. And then some limited tile work. You can see the decorative colored tile on the front landing, and then also on the steps on the breezeway, just on the risers, was added in the last few years. And finally, the garage door was added, I think, in about 2000. If you remember our last round, we had some garage doors that you felt weren't appropriate to the house. In the case of these, with the white color and the simple detailing, it seemed it didn't detract too much from the overall character. So overall, we have a house with very high integrity. And as I said, in Rosmoyne, it's really hard to stand out as the best example in the neighborhood of a certain style, which is the first part of Criterion D. But I believe this house more than meets the second part of that criterion because it has outstanding elements of attention to the design, detail, materials, and craftsmanship for Spanish colonial in Glendale. So I can answer questions if you'd like.
Madam Chair, can I just
Yes.
go back to the first pictures, the ones that the...
Comparison?
Yeah, the 1930.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the window is on top of the door versus what it is right now.
Oh, I forgot to mention, because that could be a very old change. We don't know. You're talking about the shutters?
No,
On the
the
top-
windows
On top,
above the door.
above the door.
Right.
There's two windows existing right now, but it seems like there's about...
No, those were decorative shutters that were applied on either side.
Oh, so
They're
it's
wood,
just
they're
hard to
wood
tell?
decorative shutters that kind of make it look like there are more windows there. But I've looked at it pretty closely because I thought the same thing at first. And we're also looking at an angle, so the window openings are a little compressed.
So the shutters are gone.
The shutters are gone.
Okay.
Those could have been gone. We don't know when.
I'm glad they're gone. I'm glad they're
You like it? Yeah. Yeah, shutters like that, you see them on Spanish houses every so often, but it's not one of the things you see regularly. So.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Thanks.
Any questions from the commissioners?
I don't have any questions.
All right, thank you, Mr. Platt. And we do have a speaker card for Ms. Dion Spurlock. Please come to the podium.
Regarding those,
Could I ask you to state your name and...
I'm sorry, I'm Dion Spurlock, living at 1117 Rosmoyne.
Thank you.
Regarding those shutters, I understand why they had shutters, because they had no railings for the water to come down. The gutters. There were no gutters on the house when we bought it, and that's how many years later, 60 years later, how they could have maintained those windows in such good shape with the elements coming right there could only be by having had it shuttered for many, many years, probably. I don't know. Anyway, we moved in 1991, and we'd been looking for a year and a half for a good home that was original. And we found so many that had, especially in the 50s and 60s, had a lot of things done that were really ugly. And somebody said, come over to Glendale. So we came over, and we were told, at that time, apparently, Glendale had won an award for being one or second of the most well-run cities in the United States of its population size.
What year was that?
1990.
You probably know the details better as far as the date. Was it the first or the second?
Okay.
Yeah. Anyway, but we were just thrilled when we came. So our agent looked, and one day he found this house, and he called. He said, "Come right now." So we came and signed the papers that night. It was really very clear. We've both grown up in Spanish houses. We're both fifth-generation natives to California, so we know what's old and what's not old, pretty much. Now, the son of H.W. Hawley, which, as you said, Jay, had formed this sand and gravel project, and you told the things he had done. He was son worked with him, and the connection is interesting that I think of is that the father, Henry, wrote this book in which he said that this book was called, it was a story about him. And he said he would give homes to each of his 3 children. So this home was bought by Henry Hawley for Ray Hawley, his son. And they stayed in it until 1977. The third owner was a woman who had grown up playing with the Hawley children in the yards, and she remembered it as originally 30s and 40s. When she grew up, she married a man who wanted to work with her, and they actually just redid everything that was not original, that had become different. For instance, they had put this stucco-y, ugly stucco stuff. It's bobbly, I don't know what you call it, but she went ahead and had the hand-plastered, all hand-applied plaster put on, as she had remembered it. She had the roof totally redone with the original tiles. She started the terrace in the backyard, and did many things inside the house that were just really perfectly done without touching tile or anything else. Now I'll get to the hearsay. There's the story that I heard both from the grandson and from John. He wrote a history of Glendale Airport. John Underwood. I talked with him in length, and he told me the story that Amelia Earhart, first of all, the Holleys had great interest in aviation, and they were great friends with the woman who taught aviation at Glendale College. And Blythe Hawley, the wife of the owner, also taught at Glendale College. She taught English and philosophy. So she knew this other woman who taught aviation, whom Amelia Earhart was friends of. So they all became friends. And apparently Amelia stayed in the Hawleys' house on and off when her father was in a convalescent home in Eagle Rock. And so before she built a home in Toluca Lake, she sometimes would stay there. So that's the hearsay. We really do love Glendale. We love the whole beautiful aspect of it. We're so impressed with the police department and the fire department. Everything, the way it's run is just superb. We hope we can stay there for the rest of our life and keep it in such good condition as we found it. I feel that it's sort of a keystone lot as you enter Ross Moyne off of Glen Oaks, because it's right at the beginning of Ross Moyne, and it is on the largest lot on our block, and it's the corner, of course. So it's very visible, and I think it's kind of an important. Would be wonderful for the Ross Moyne historical thing to have that house in it, especially where it's situated. And I guess that's about all. Any questions, anybody?
Any questions for Mrs. Perlow?
I don't have any question.
Okay.
Thank you so
Anyway,
much.
thank you very much for your time and your interest in all of this.
It's a lovely house. Thank you for taking
Beautiful house.
such a nice care of it. All right, we are closing the public hearing, and Mr. Amirian will start.
Yes, I went to see the house on Sunday when Mr. Mardian was leaving.
Thank you.
I asked him to come accompany me, so we went back again. He came back. The house is just gorgeous. But I just like to ask, is it me or everyone else notices that all these beautiful houses that come before us, they don't have any architect? They are done by possibly ordinary people and developers who have good taste. Mm-hmm. Architects in my opinion, are notorious to ruin houses. So,
You're suggesting they're unnecessary.
That's a good observation.
I am an architect.
Yeah, I do notice that. I do notice that.
Yeah, the house is just beautiful, and as she mentioned, it's in a very prominent location. It's just wonderful. I will not hesitate to support this, but I have a concern, as Jay mentioned. It's the garage door. I would not vote against it because of the garage door, but I would like to ask my colleagues and the staff if we can somehow suggest the owner, and if they are willing, to possibly go and change the garage door to a door that will fit the building better.
The mechanism we have for that, because this is a Glendale Register nomination as well as a Mills Act nomination, under the Mills Act we don't always do this, but it's possible to look forward, ask the applicant to give us a work plan that within the next X number of years we'll expect to see if these garage doors are on their way out anyways, we can talk about the date, and that we'd look to see for a more appropriate garage door. Ultimately, what we're finding on a lot of these historic houses is that historic garage doors are very rare. And some of the replacement garage doors that are trying to be historic, and a lot of people say, oh, it's beautiful, and they think it's going to look like a carriage barn or something, which wouldn't be appropriate for a house that was built when the owners had cars. So we could certainly condition it in the Mills Act. We could recommend it to the owner, and then we'd always be working with them as a Glendale Register property to make sure that whatever goes in there is appropriate.
Well, that would satisfy me, and I would have no hesitation of supporting this both for historic designation as well as Mills Act. Thank you.
Welcome, thank you. Ms. Stepanian, would you like to go next?
Well, I pass by often from Rosemount, and I really appreciate the beautiful houses around, and this is the one of the best. And I really like the way you kept it all these years. And I will definitely support the idea of keeping it as a historic house.
Thank you. Mr. Adrian?
I thought I would be last. Well, I go along with my colleagues for a change 100%. It's a beautiful home. I didn't have the opportunity to actually physically go by it and see it, but just the presentation today it's just fantastic. I just have a quick question for you, and I'm sorry I didn't ask it earlier. You're seated now, but did you by any chance do any painting on the house, on the exterior of the house? Did you paint any part of the house yourself since you were in the house? Okay. Otherwise, No, it's beautiful. It's beautiful. No, I think it's a winner. Thank you.
Mr. Mardian?
Thank you. I actually drive by this every day. My in-laws live on Cedar, so I know the house for a number of years. I think it's a wonderful house, but I do agree with Commissioner Mirian that we have to do something about these garage doors, because this is not the first application that has come forward, and we're going to keep getting these. I understand that, most of these homes don't have historical doors, but we got to have some mechanism that, the next door that goes into that house or the garage door will be in keeping with the style of the architecture. I do agree it's a beautiful house. I mean, the stucco treatment on it is one of my favorites, and these corbels, those massive corbels, make the house. I mean, that's really traditional Mission Revival detail, and I will support it. But we need to condition it in the future that garage door needs to be replaced, because we don't want to set precedent for other applications or other things that will come forward to us, especially in historical districts.
And just to clarify, do you want to condition it, and I guess you'll all decide this and we're voting on it.
Well, I mean, that's
do you want to condition it under the Mills Act with a specific timetable, or is it wait until this door fails or they decide to replace it for whatever reason and then make sure that we have an appropriate
Yeah,
door?
when the door fails, I think that's a fair,
I would go along with that, yes.
I mean,
Okay.
Any
Thank you.
other? Thank you,
Thank you.
Mr. Mardian. I would like to say that I do agree. I think it's lovely. I was not there to take part of your tour. I apologize, but I did go by on my way here today to look at it again. It's a stunning example because I see the garage on the side with its lovely buttresses. Now, there's so many wonderful details to this house that I agree with the criteria that we're using. I do find it interesting that some of the finer architecture here is done by some very classy developers. I have to agree with you. This is, I think, just a lovely example. The breezeway, to me, is one of the key features that you didn't really take time on, but it really adds so much to it with the peaked arch. Is so nice.
Breezeway is my favorite word in the English language.
It's my favorite place in a piece of architecture, quite frankly.
but that has a little Moorish flavor. That
It sure does, doesn't
I was
it?
going to say that, yeah.
Just really, really dear. I would agree with my colleagues that if we had a work plan that stated in the Mills Act that when replacement time came, there would be consultation with the city on putting in a more appropriate door, that would be a perfect place to put it. So I would, yes, sir.
But before you vote, I just want to kind of get a better sense of what direction we'd be going in terms of a replacement door. And if you look probably on the screen behind you, the details a little better, you can sort of see what we believe would be the original door from the 1930 photograph. And I can't tell, and maybe you can see on that screen, it looks like it might have been vertically.
That's what it
correct,
looked like
yeah,
to me.
so-
That's what I thought.
So that would be pretty
I
much
was
the
gonna
big
bring that
difference of
up.
vertical orientation. Would it need to be a wood door, or could it be a replacement material? That
I would prefer wood door.
A wood door, okay. And no window, no lights, or would lights be okay?
Well, I mean, it would be too restricting even if we kind of comment with light or without light. Something that you or someone who is looking at it will look at it and kind of
Okay.
make
Yeah,
sure
I
that...
think,
I think we're not here to design it. I think
Sure.
we're here to approve it.
mhm.
The
Dion?
original door,
Come to the microphone.
the original garage door were about this width, strictly wood, all the way up and down, no windows, nothing.
So it was
But it was
horizontal.
very heavy, and of course, the rain got to it, and I don't know how you could do it with a wooden door, with it not being,
They still make
Too heavy.
sectional doors, sectional, just like what you have now, but it's wood. So it's a common, like door that it exists, but was
okay.
Better with horizontal.
yeah.
We want to say either way, right? Horizontal or vertical?
As long as it meets the.
Okay, the most important thing is that we want a wood door, and we'll work out the details
Right.
when the time comes. So.
Thank you.
Yes.
Chairperson Lansigan, yes. Before you close, I just want to make one more comment I forgot. That is, I like just to say that the picture window with the blue screen that you have behind it, it just looks so wonderful. It looks like a painting over there.
I built that screen with a friend of mine.
Oh, is that right? Yes, yes. Very, very nice, very nice.
She's very talented individual. She's also a pianist.
Yes, yes, yes.
Jay, do you have the right direction?
I believe we're okay on that?
Because I went in the house, I saw a lot of pianos. I said, what about piano?
I do have one correction on the staff report. On page 3, in the alterations, where you are indicating, it's about the 5th line down, it's white color and simple patterning do,
Oh, right.
not call
Yeah.
undo. We got a little carried away with
My
the do's
DUEs,
there.
right.
So I just thought you might want to.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
No, where it is?
It's on page 3.
Okay.
D-O.
Oh, all right.
Sorry
I'm
about
following
that.
in your footsteps. I have to.
I circled it. I couldn't make sense out of that one. I said, I'll circle it and...
I don't know how, with my strong and powerful English, I missed it. You got that?
So shall I have a motion from one of the commissioners?
Yeah, I would be glad to move that the Historic Preservation recommends to the City Council that the house be designated as historic resource, as well as I would recommend that the council go into contract for Mills Act with this,
With the condition?
With the condition?
with the conditions.
And a second?
I'll second that.
Second by Mr. Mardian. May I have a call of the roll?
Commissioner Adrian,
Aye.
Commissioner Mardian,
Yes.
Commissioner Amirian,
Yes,
Commissioner Stepanian,
Yes.
and Chair Landrigan.
Yes.
congratulations.
Congratulations, and thank you for being such a caretaker. It's gorgeous. Now we are on item 7, Planning Department updates and informational briefings.
That's right. I have two things for you today. One is on the agenda, and this is at Commissioner Adrian's request. Back in December, you asked for an update on the Seeley's building.
Right.
So recently, we signed off on the design of the Seeley's building. So we reviewed all of the latest set of drawings and made sure that they met everything that you guys had reviewed. All the windows and materials were called out as they should have been. So we were able to sign off on those. And the project is now in plan check. So it's going through the process to get all of the permits it needs to start going.
Thank you, Jay.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
The other notice is just I wanted to make sure everyone's heard about the library's history drive. And if you haven't, I'll tell you briefly about the history drive, which is an initiative that Mayor Draymond has come up with to ask Glendale residents who have old photographs or old documents or old menus or old anything that relates to the history of Glendale, to the history of their families in Glendale, if they want to share those with the library on March 14th between 10 o'clock and 3 o'clock at the Central Library. There's going to be a bunch of people, including me, who are there scanning documents, scanning photos, accepting donations. So it's not going to be quite like an Antiques Roadshow because who knows what it's worth. But we're hoping to build the library's collection of this kind of ephemera and kind of personal things that might not make its way into a collection. I'm hopeful. It's a really good resource when we're doing historic research to see, like, little Susie's having her birthday party and all her friends are on the front lawn. And that's what the picture was taken of, but we have the house in the background, or we have the neighbor's house, and we can often get a lot of information out of these things that we wouldn't expect. So,
When you said donation, you are not talking about money donation.
no, if someone has
They
a
can donate.
photograph, they can either give it to the library, or if it's a real treasured keepsake, they can have us scan it, and then we'll have the image, but they'll get to keep it. So. And this is not the end of the process, it's the beginning. So it's a kickoff for the history drive, and they're going to keep this as an ongoing kind of thing.
This is something Mayor Draymond came up with, right?
It is his idea, from what I've
Or was he
heard.
dreamed up, but I wouldn't have been.
I think other cities have done this. I think it's a good
idea.
kind of tool to
Nice idea.
get everyone involved. So.
March 14th. Where shall it be? Where's it held?
It's going to be at the Central Library, up in the auditorium.
Okay, thank you.
And I also have an announcement. I'm going to ask Ida if she can actually. Passing to you a flyer announcing the North Glendale La Crescenta Community Plan process. And mid-December of last year, the City Council authorized the Planning Department to begin a public participation program to develop recommendations regarding a North Glendale Community Plan. This is for the incorporated areas of Crescenta Valley, the La Crescenta area, as well as Montrose, Whiting Woods, coming down to Spar Heights and Montecito Park neighborhoods. The community plan is essentially a vision plan. It'll be that for that area of the city. It'll be the city's general plan, which covers issues of land use, park planning, transportation planning, to some extent economic development issues might be covered, as well as design guidelines and recommendations regarding zoning. So it's a very comprehensive plan, and at this point we are in a process of interviewing various stakeholders and community members, whether they're business owners, homeowners, property owners, various different community groups from churches, business chambers, just to get an assessment of what people see as the assets and opportunities of North Glendale, and that will lead us to eventually formulating a advisory group that will work out recommendations, and then that'll ultimately be brought forward to the City Council. So it's a year-long process, a major effort for the Planning Department in 2009, and as of last month, we started interviewing people. So we just want to bring it to the Commission's attention, and of course, if you have any recommendations of community groups we should speak with, please let us know. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I ask you, what is considered the midway point between North and South Glendale? What are you using as your limiter on?
We actually haven't quite determined what's north. We've actually heard some competing concerns in terms of nomenclature we're trying to resolve with from the community. There are some folks who refer to that area as North Glendale or Far North Glendale. But then there are other folks who say, no, it's La Crescenta, and North Glendale is what's known as Northwest, or the old Cumberland Heights neighborhood. Mm-hmm. That's north of Glen Oaks. So.
North of Glen Oaks, you're right.
So we hope that maybe through the process we'll get a better handle on what the terminology should be.
But right now, what are you using as the southern boundary to do your study with?
Well, as I said, this is the neighborhood of Spar Heights on North in the incorporated.
La Crescenta,
kind of
Crescenta
the
Boulevard.
Out of Verdugo intersection.
Okay.
Montrose,
Right.
anything north of Montrose?
Anything north of Montrose, and Spar Heights is directly south. In fact, a good way to think of it is anything north of Oakmont Country Club.
Okay. All right.
And we anticipate ultimately the city may be organized into maybe about 5 different community plan areas of similar size, and we'll figure out the names for those when we get to those neighborhoods.
Okay.
I had a question. That includes the urban guidelines for Foothill Boulevard and all that's been discussed in the last few.
Yes, as part of this effort, we'll be looking at updating the city's design guidelines both for commercial and for residential.
Okay.
To actually be more reflective of the community character and of our process. As you know, the design review process is, is relatively unique, and we need the appropriate guidelines and tools that will work with that process and give it direction.
Mm-hmm.
So are you thinking of a Foothill-specific plan?
We're not thinking of a specific plan in the sense that a specific plan is a particular term in California planning that requires a great deal of work. As you know, we have 3 specific plans in the city for downtown, mm-hmm. for the town center, which is the Americana, and then South Brand Boulevard. We'd rather not pursue another specific plan just because the amount of effort to put into it is quite large. But we are thinking there'll be a lot of special considerations given to Foothill Boulevard.
What is Kenneth Village referred to?
West?
No, I mean, there was a study that was done on Kenneth Village all by itself.
I'm not familiar with that, to be honest. I know there was a special set of guidelines developed for Adams Square.
Well, it was a study, and it was done quite a while ago, but it was by Doug Sussman's company.
Oh, no kidding.
No?
I wasn't aware of it. We'll dig through the library and see if we can't find it. If not, I'll call Doug and ask him to give it to me.
It was called the Kenneth Village, and I don't know if it was called a specific plan study or just a neighborhood study, but it was it actually brought about a lot of the changes that occurred to bring it more into community. And to me, that seems like a really great idea to consider for Foothill, because it is so helter-skelter.
Oh, well, as I said, if I can't find it, I'll call Doug and ask him to provide it to me.
Best of planning is successful, correct? Thank you.
One other question on this. How does this relate to, it was in the paper, La Crescenta had some urban design guidelines on Foothill, or the county was working on something there?
Yes. What you're referring to, Commissioner Mardian, is in the county stretch of Foothill Boulevards, the Crescenta Valley Town Council, which represents the county residents, developed specific guidelines for Foothill Boulevard. And in the county's land use planning mechanism, they have a tool called a community standards district, which is essentially an overlay district. And so the design guidelines that the county residents developed for Foothill Boulevard tie to a community standards district, and that has been approved by the Regional Planning Commission. In fact, goes tomorrow to vote by the Board of Supervisors to be implemented. We've met with the authors of that plan and had a couple of presentations with them to understand their goals and ambitions. To a large extent, there's an interest in seeing Foothill Boulevard as one street, regardless of which jurisdiction it's in. And so we're aware of that, but the county's process is different than Glendale's process, and so we have to figure out how to, tailor the intent of what they develop to work with Glendale's process.
Thank you.
Any other comments from commissioners?
No?
No? It was a fast meeting, so hearing none, thank you very much, and take a motion for adjournment.
I'll motion that we adjourn.
All right, thank you.
you.
Second?
Second.
All right. All in favor? Aye. Thank you, we're adjourned.
Adjourn.